I'm Sarah Colvin, and we are out here on a beautiful fall day in the woods of the Crocker Neck Conservation Area in Cotuit with Conservation Agent Martin Wunderly. We're talking a little bit about the ecosystem out here, as well as the need for controlled burns. So obviously we're looking behind us and we can see some char marks on the bottoms of the trees from previous burns. Why would you need to burn in an area like this? And maybe let's start by talking about, what we see on the ground here and growing up from the earth.
Sure. The Crocker Neck Conservation Area mostly consists of a pitch pine oak forest, and it sort of has a bit of an open canopy, lets enough light in for some plant species to be covering the ground, and most of that in this area would be huckleberry. But over time you get an accumulation of leaf litter, woody debris, dead trees or limbs that accumulate to the point where they could if they were to ignite, to cause a larger than desired wildfire, sometimes catastrophic, sometimes just something that could be contained rather easily. So what we're trying to do when we have a prescribed burn, or why we need one, is one, to reduce the chances of these catastrophic wildfires, and two is to maintain the natural composition of plant species in this habitat. Historically, these low ground fires, now they're called prescribed, but in the past they would have just been a low flame, low heat, ground burning fire. Might have occurred through a lightning strike under the right conditions, or just some type of smoldering leaf litter on a really hot, dry day in July.
Sure. Certainly we had pretty much a drought over the summer, so conditions good. And as I'm looking through, I think we probably had some more greenery in the summer months, but it's definitely getting to be that winter dry area. So talk to me a little bit about how the prescribed burn works and how often is it done? I mean, maybe we can start by talking about the last burn that was done, and that was about, you said 4 acres were burnt here in Crocker Neck?
Right. We're standing in an area that we had contractor do a prescribed burn for us, and they specialize in landscape management. They have a burn boss on their company that is certified to control, to monitor and manage a low burning fire that you would use in a prescribed burn. They're assisted by the local fire department, the Cotuit Fire Company, and the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. They also have prescribed burn certified employees, and what they would do is drop a small amount of fuel from a can to ignite a fire, and they have all of the safety equipment and fire trucks, and they actually bring a fire hose out so they can contain this as they go along, and they're dripping fuel not more than 10 to 20 feet every minute, or 3 to 4 minutes. So they're watching it burn. They have a crew of at least 10 people on site, and they want to just burn this leaf litter off and get down to create just a ground cover of dark black ash, which will sprout new growth from beneficial native plants the following spring, which in turn provides the right type of foraging and habitat for a variety of birds and mammals and other wildlife species that are native to and able to survive in this type of ecosystem.
So it's almost like the ash is like an accelerated compost.
Right. And what you do when you're having different areas prescribed burn is creating a patchwork in your forest of different successional stages of fire response. So you would have maximizing your species diversity between these patches, whether it's plant type or birds that like to forage in fresh growth, or as opposed to birds that like to forage through a little bit thicker understory and may live in a canopy. So it really improves the overall natural diversity of this habitat.
Sure. So how do you determine where you're going to burn? Is it kind of areas that might be more susceptible to wildfire, or is it areas that you really do want to kind of foster that kind of growth and rebirth?
It's a combination of that. The particular habitats were accustomed to low burning fires since the dawn of time. So that's one of the things you would look for in this pitch pine oak forest is one of these habitats. There are certain scrublands and other dry areas in the state and the country that require fire to maintain their composition. Then there are also areas that may be susceptible to extremely catastrophic wildfires if they're left to overgrow or accumulate massive amounts of leaf litter. The Barnstable County Extension Office created a wildfire preparedness plan for the entire Cape, and they've mapped every town for potentially extreme, catastrophic wildfire events. So we know from that fire plan, emergency preparedness plan, which areas to target for a prescribed burn. Cotuit, Crocker Neck Conservation Area was listed as one of the highest on the Cape as far as a potential for a wildfire, and we're surrounded by residential area on the western edge of this conservation land. And on the eastern side, we have a salt marsh, which has a lot of Phragmites, tall grass species in there that could also catch fire and spread to the other side, where we have more residential buildings.
Sure.
So we're trying to prevent that type of dangerous event from happening.
Great. And of course, there's a cost associated with the burns, and you mentioned that you're looking for some grants so you can do additional burns.
Right. In the past, we've relied on the Barnstable County Wildfire Preparedness Grant Program to supply the town of Barnstable with funding to begin these controlled burns. We developed a plan specifically for Crocker Neck based on that funding. We had a last year's burn that was done in this area to begin to manage for potential wildfire problems. The county funding may not be happening again this year, so we're reaching out to the state of Massachusetts Mass Wildlife Habitat Program. We're asking for enough funding to complete 2 full days of burn, which may get us up to 12 acres.
Excellent.
Traditionally, the fires that occurred in this type of habitat are on the periodic occurrence of 6 to 25 years. So as long as we can maintain some type of pseudo-natural fire regime here, we want to do that within that time frame. So we'll be coming back for another round in a decade or so to try and reburn some of these areas and maintain it as habitat for wildlife that are used to those conditions, and also prevent wildfires.
Wonderful.